Don White, Loretta Hopman, address Manti, Utah, class of 74. Well, a retirement hobby has been family history, but trying to share it with people is pretty limited because most people are not interested in family history. unless they are a part of the family, and even then I find unless you're a family historian, you don't have that degree of interest.
Have you found any really cool family history facts? Like anything particularly
Oh,
interesting?
correct. Yeah, that's what makes it fascinating, of course. I mean, I'm now working with records from France in French from the time of Champlain. So people that came to New France on the same vessel as some of the repeat voyages of Samuel Champlain up the St. Lawrence. And that is really snazzy to be able to play with those documents, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
Many other things. I mean, old German records from way back, English, Scottish, Irish, you name it. But the French finds are pandemic hobby time finds. So they're the last 2 years.
Nice. That's a very different one. So we've heard a lot of different hobbies that people have picked up, from like baking, which I also started to indulge in during the pandemic, to like learning the ukulele, to karate. It's so much fun.
You're partly responsible then for the flour shortage that Loretta is suffering from, and I suffer from.
Suffered. Yeah, okay, now.
I guess I'd have to fess up that the choice of geology was really a tool to satisfy my interest in adventures and travels. As a high schooler, I had a classmate whose dad was an exploration geologist. He was always coming back from fantastic places like Colombia, and I just figured, whoa, that's the way to get to those places, huh? So, without giving it much thought, when perhaps one of the first people to ever ask was the interviewer in Hopkins Hall at Williams, said, well, what do you want to be and what do you want to major in? And I had no ready answer, but I said geology, because of that deep down thought, and I think they needed some majors in geology.
We're always looking for more.
And that worked out.
We're always looking for more.
So, my aspirations in geology were to travel and to experience adventures, and so a Williams graduate geology major was recruiting in my senior year and hired me for a project in Iran, what is now the Russian-built Bushehr nuclear power plant on the Persian Gulf, creating all the trouble with production of uranium and plutonium in Iran. That was to be my project, and I was hired for it and meant to go to Iran for a Williams employer. And the poor guy couldn't deliver because the Shah got cancer, and then the Shah died, and you know what happened with the theocracy afterwards. And there goes my project. So when that was going down the tubes, it wasn't convincing that I couldn't weasel my way into that project. So I took a leave of absence from the company and went to Tehran. I took a 6-month trip all around South Asia, one big loop of which was a month all hitchhiking through Afghanistan to get to Iran, by the back door. I went through all across the Hindu Kush, across the border at the border station that was just taken by the Taliban yesterday, between Herat and Mashhad, Iran, and headed to Tehran, went to the Dames and More office, confirmed that the power plant project was dead. Hitchhiked down through the deserts, the south, Isfahan and Shiraz, and back across the deserts through Baluchistan, back into Pakistan, Nepal and parts of India, and this is the connection to Loretta because I met her folks in Sri Lanka, in a little town that I was hitchhiking through. And though she wasn't on scene, she was working elsewhere in the Maldives. Her dad, and family with whom I spent the night, put us in correspondence touch, which worked for 28 years, until I was able to track her down in Canada and actually meet her one day, which was like 20 years ago. But in the meantime, I switched between one Williams geology employer, that was the Dames and More fellow, and then went with Ernie Lehman, class of 51, in Minneapolis. And the appeal there was real exploration as opposed to engineering jobs, and real trips as opposed to ones that didn't come to fruition, huh? And so he sent me off to places like Chibougamau, Quebec, for 9-month stints in the winter. This is a little bit north of 60 latitude, and so when you get up there in the winter, you're looking at negative 65 Fahrenheit, which is very close to negative 65 Celsius. The kind of temperatures where when you pull a pike out of a hole in the ice, it goes flop, flop, flop for 20 seconds, and then it's frozen solid. He had a project pending in Somalia that did fall through, but then he had some really good projects throughout the United States, which gave me some fabulous experience. And that basically qualified me to go on my own, which I did in '84. And so I consulted then for better than 30 years into the exploration world, which in my line of work really means that you're working for Canadian junior companies with international projects. And that took me to Costa Rica, Panama, Argentina, Chile, Peru, some little adventures in South Yemen and Madagascar, a number of projects in Canada, a number of projects in Mexico, and a fair number back in the States again. So that gets us right up to retirement, which was just in recent years. And that's just when the phone stops ringing because the gold price is down and so forth. So that's about the career in short.
That's a very exciting one. I mean, somewhat similarly, I basically became a geoscience major, graduated in 2017, so that I could be outside and like talking to people and communicating with like that community. It's not quite as high adventure as you in some ways, but definitely still sort of a means to an end in the sense that like that was what I really wanted to be doing, and so I very much feel that the geology department as it was very much scratched an itch of mine, and yeah, it's a really great department.
We made this move to Manti, Utah, which is center of the state, rural community, traditionally farming. It's got two things going for it: the cows and the alfalfa feed, because they're out 6 months of the year and they're back in the barn for 6 months of the year with what you grow from the other 6 months. So it's a rural community which is historically very Mormon. It's right in the middle of what's jokingly called the Jello Belt. That means you're served green Jello for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. A Mormon favorite. We spared you. If you went to the what would it be, the Mom's Cafe in Salina, which you drove by,
We did.
you saw that at the you would get green Jello there. Probably with little pink marshmallows in it. Golly, most of our friends relate to either recreation or work or that sort of thing, and that would be not the local community. There's the Williams Club of San Pete County constitutes two, so we have a quorum here with with one member in attendance and two honorable Ephs to host here now. The other one is Wally Chambers, class of 78, and he lives 1 block southwest of here. So he and I he's a retired Navy pilot and a professional mountaineer. I mean, that's his avocation and love. So he went into the Navy so he could retire and climb mountains, which is exactly what he does.
Some of your friends do for recreation. Like you mentioned that was another community that you occupied, and so what do y'all do for fun?
Around here, it's mainly hiking. The national parks are abundant, so we love to have visitors with more time than yourselves, because we head to places like Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef and camp in the national forest outside of the park, where you can just pull off the road and camp anywhere, and then hike through spectacular slot canyons and box canyons. The landscapes are just unbeatable, particularly for a geologist. So that's why you've got to get back. I would say the grounding in a general sense from the Williams geology program was what was important. Every subject was in the course book, and if you're a major, you're gonna sample it all, huh? And you know, if you're going to be an explorationist, you have to know something about everything. So you can't go to a project in all volcanics looking for gold in Argentina without an understanding of volcanism. But you can't go down there without an understanding of phase diagrams of metals, because temperatures and compositions count for something, huh? I really thought that paleontology, as an example, was probably something I was never going to use. And just about a a couple years ago, I wrote a thank you note to Jim Carew, who is no longer in the Williams Geology Department, but he was the paleo professor, junior professor of the time. And because of Jim Carew's course, I was able to go to a project in Peru where they could not understand why the zinc and lead were where they were. And this is my job, is to say why it's there, how much, how rich, and most importantly, why is it in any given place. And it was bloody obvious that there were fossils through this thing. I mean, it was just zinc and lead galore, 50 and 60% metal, but it was in fossil mats of a reef. And I knew that because Jim Carew showed me enough reef specimens, and I was so tired of oozy, spongy muds in that course. But it was the insight to be able to say from core, drill core, that these are oozy, spongy muds, and because of the sponge organics, the zinc was deposited there. I mean, it was that simple. And that guidance is worth hundreds of millions of dollars to find that deposit and go in hot pursuit of oozy organic muds, because that's where the metal's going to be. So what I'm saying is the rounding of the curriculum is probably the great strength of the Williams experience. Huh? Well, certainly my career, as we have alluded, has brought me many joys in terms of travels and adventures and exposure to anything and everything. My marital relationship now brings me lots of joy because that's part of where we are, what we do, how we live. I would say we are extremely fortunate to be who we are and the stage of life that we're at now in terms of being able to enjoy it. My career finished up before the pandemic. You can imagine what a pain that would have been. Travel and foreign countries, projects, necessarily relating with field crews and rural places. I mean, it'd be like the geology equivalent of a church camp where everybody gets COVID, right? So timing gives me joy because it seems that everything about my life has been very fortuitous in timing. I missed the Vietnam War. I missed the IT era. I quite literally embraced email at the end of my career, and that will carry me through death, I think. I don't have to have Zoom meetings with clients and Zoom coordination with my field crews. So that gives me a lot of joy. That's a negative sense. Golly, I think I'd have to write a note to my father to say, thanks for opening all the doors, not shutting any, and explaining what was through all those doors. He was a great provider of opportunity, And so I've been able to embrace opportunity to the max. So that's been good.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I mean, it's moments like that of reflection and sort of being able to appreciate those things that I think make a lot of interactions with people interesting, and I'm really glad that we were able to chat with you after you invited us here and really hear a lot of your story and get to share some of these moments. Are there any final thoughts you'd like to share with anyone?
Gosh, no. Just, I'll bet there are a lot of Williams travelers coming past Manti and realize that we are starved for visitors. We have a lovely place to visit, and we would thoroughly enjoy visits from Ephs, old, young, anywhere, anytime.
Definitely.
Those pickles were.
All right, maybe I'll try one. I usually don't like
Should
pickles,
waste a
but
pickle. I will not talk to
I will
you.
give it a try.
Exactly.
That's
I
up to
tell
you.
him the same thing, and then I take it off his
Yeah.
plate.
And we certainly appreciate your hospitality and welcome here. This is a very nice break and detour, and the food was delicious.
Oh my goodness.
There's more. May I bring some? Because
Loretta, I'm gonna explode if I keep eating them. I kept going.
yeah, because there's more inside.